Handstand push-ups are awesome. I absolutely love them. They're highly complex, yet at the same time, they're highly scalable to really fit every single one's current level. The handstand push-up is basically the bodyweight version of a shoulder press, and possibly one of the only ways to effectively train overhead pushing with bodyweight only. They're great for building strength, they're great for building size, they're great for building body awareness, and to improve your overall handstand control. Getting better at the handstand push-up is gonna help you get better at your handstands. It's gonna help you get better at handstand walking. It's gonna help with your one-arm handstands. It's gonna help with your crow, with your crane pose, with your bend arm press. Literally, I could go on for hours. You see the common theme here. I love handstand push-ups. It's that simple. Welcome to Handstands and the Rest. I'm your host, Coach Bachmann. Today's episode is gonna be all about the handstand push-up. We're gonna discuss form and which muscles are involved in the handstand push-up, why handstand push-ups are so difficult and what are the most common mistakes, how balance works in the handstand push-ups, progressions, how to bust through plateaus, what are common training splits and strength protocols. We're going to look at a sample handstand push-up training routine and workout that you can implement right away. And if you want to get a customized handstand push-up workout that fits your current level, then make sure you follow the link down in the description below, head over to my website, fill out the customization questions, and request your free handstand push-up workout tailored towards your specific level of strength into your inbox right away. Whilst an overhead shoulder press is pretty straightforward, the handstand push-up is quite a bit more complex than that. In the essence, we're doing the same thing. We're extending our arms overhead, which means that our anterior deltoid, when big, the shoulders are going to take most of the heat. At the same time, of course, your triceps is also going to do quite a bit of work as the arms are extending. Moving down, the chest, your biggest upper body muscle, will do a lot of the lifting as well. Then, of course, your core has to engage, your back muscles have to engage, and your legs have to engage in order to stabilize the entire position. Now, in your handstand push-up, if you're leaning further towards the front, meaning your face comes down to the floor further away from your hands, and the angle between your body and the floor decreases, you're going to involve your chest muscles more. If you're keeping your body more in an upright position, meaning your face comes down right in between your hands, you're going to involve your shoulder muscles more. But it's important to keep in mind that in order for your face to come down in between your hands, your elbows have to flare out quite a bit. Flared out elbows in any kind of shoulder pressing movement is not great, as you're pushing for an impingement, and in general you can cause a lot of shoulder damage there. As a general rule of thumb, lean further, keep your elbows in so you can involve your chest and your shoulder muscles, but in a healthy manner. On top of all of this strength, we're also going to need to be good at handstands. Now, being good at handstands really only becomes important at the very end of your handstand push-up journey. The very last progressions of this rather long journey or without the wall in a freestanding handstand, basically to reach that finish line. At this point, you need to be fairly good at handstands, so that's something that we should take into consideration from the very beginning when we're later building our handstand push-up training routine. Besides strength and the ability to balance on your hands, you also need a certain amount of mobility. I know this seems a bit unexpected, but you do also need a certain amount of triceps and lat mobility. Let me explain. When we're extending our arms in the handstand push-up, we have to fight two things. We have to fight gravity, but we also have to fight the resistance within our own body. If you have mobility limitations that are going to make it harder for you to get your hands overhead, you're going to have to push against gravity and against your own mobility. Now that's going to make things significantly harder. So from the start, while we focus on overhead pushing strength and handstand control, depending on your current level, you might also have to invest into lat and triceps mobility. Now, one last thing that will of course help with your handstand push-up is being light. Now, we said when we're extending our arms, we're fighting gravity and the restrictions within our body. Restrictions within our body we're going to make easier, lighter by stretching. Gravity in a way becomes lighter if you become lighter. Now, I'm not telling you to shed everything that you have, to go on a specific diet and drop down to like 2% body fat. That's not at all. But I am telling you, if you're extremely overweight, performing a handstand push-up is going to be significantly more difficult. So whilst we train for the handstand push-up, also investing into a healthy fitness routine that will adjust your body composition into a more athletic and lean look, that will make your handstand push-up significantly easier. Now, when we're performing our handstand push-up, no matter our current progression, in the starting position, we want to have our scapula elevated, pushing the shoulders up towards the ears. That's what we do in a handstand. We also want to look at our hands. As we now lower into the bottom position of the handstand push-up, as our elbows bend, this scapular elevation doesn't have to stay. You can allow your shoulders to naturally slide out of elevation and go into depression. As you're leaning your shoulders towards the front, you want to make sure they stay protracted. Arching the back in the handstand push-up is the number one thing that we always want to try to avoid. You need to keep your back straight in order to stay efficient, but also to protect yourself from injuries. Now, as you're coming down, your elbows, they want to stay about 45 degrees inwards. You don't want to let them flare out drastically too far. If you're just working on basic beginner progressions, letting the elbows flare a little bit more is okay. But the more difficult your progressions get, the more important it gets that your elbows stay in and don't flare out too far. For highly advanced calisthenic skills, your elbows cannot flare at all. So you might as well, from the very start, build these healthy habits of keeping the elbows in. Additionally, if you do let your elbows flare out to 90 degrees, that puts a lot of really negative and bad pressure on your shoulder, and your risk for injuries increases a lot. The last thing to know about general handstand push-up form is that it is very important to follow the same path on the way down that you take on the way up. Looking at the freestanding handstand push-up, for example, there's really two movements that happen. The first one is you're going to lean your shoulders towards the front. Then the elbows bend and we travel shoulders, face, hips, feet. In the angle that you're in, you're going to travel straight down on a vertical line. Then you extend the arms, push back up, straight up on the vertical line. You're basically going to fully lock out your elbows with your shoulders sticking out on this side and your feet sticking out on the other side. And only when your elbows are fully locked, you're going to come back to your starting position by unleaning the shoulders. I believe one big reason why so many athletes really appreciate and love the handstand push-up is because it is a very challenging drill. Once you master the handstand push-up, you definitely feel accomplished. It's a way of setting yourself apart from other athletes, but it's also just a way to feel like a superhero, like invincible. You're doing a squat, but with your arms. That is pretty cool. But what is it actually that makes the handstand push-up so hard? Handstand push-ups are hard because they combine so many different aspects of your body weight training into one skill. Most obviously, strength and balance. You have to be strong in order to practice the balance of the handstand push-up. And, well, you have to be pretty good at the balance to be able to apply the strength. So the bottleneck here really is that one doesn't necessarily improve whilst the other one doesn't exist. The idea here is to practice both things separately. You first get very strong with handstand push-up strength, you get quite good with handstands, freestanding, you build control, you build form, and then you can fuse the two of them and one step at a time work your way towards a completely freestanding handstand push-up. On top of that, you need to have a strong understanding for timing. You need to understand when and where and how to apply pressure to push upwards and not outwards towards the front or towards the back. Weight distribution matters just as much as all of the other things. If your weight is in the wrong part of your hand, no matter if you're pushing the right or wrong moment, if you're strong enough or you have enough feeling for balance, once your weight is in the wrong part of your hand and you apply pressure, you push yourself straight out of the movement. Last but not least, the handstand push-up requires a lot of coordination. I gave you the list of the things that need to happen. You need to keep your elbows in, shoulders need to be protracted, elevated, slide out of elevation, core engaged, feet go this way, face goes this way. A lot of things need to happen at the same time. Now, you and I sitting here talking about it, it seems simple enough. But trust me, we put you upside down, we apply pressure, fatigue, maybe someone's watching you. All of a sudden, the stress rises, a lot is going on, and you forget everything. It becomes difficult. The handstand push-up being difficult means that there's lots of room for error. Many mistakes will happen on your way towards a freestanding handstand. And to be fair, it might never be perfect. You might forever work on your handstand push-up, but it's also the beauty of it. You can forever improve it, make it prettier, make it more efficient, make it more solid, more convenient, just simply stronger and better. The most common mistake that I see in the handstand push-up, and this happens in any progression along the way, is arching the back as you push back up. Like I said earlier, arching the back is the number one thing that we're trying to avoid. But why does the back actually arch when we push up? The reason here is honestly not coordination or technique. The problem here is simply that you're lacking strength. If your back arches on the way up, it's your body's natural reaction because your body panics because it knows it's not able to apply enough force to actually push out. So what happens is that we arch the back, which closes the shoulders, so you're able to use your chest more, the big upper body muscles, and less your shoulders. Additionally, weight distribution changes a bit and makes it more favorable for you to apply pressure and for you to stay on top of your hands. The easy solution here is to simply practice easier progressions. Now, if you're already at a freestanding handstand push-up, taking a step back to the chest-to-wall handstand push-up where you really focus on protraction and on lean is really going to help you here. Make sure you're wearing socks on a slippery wall. Don't walk your feet. That's not going to help you as much. And if you say, no, wait a minute, The progression that I'm doing, no matter if freestanding or an L, if you're saying that I am strong enough to do this, but for some reason I am unable to do it, then a really good solution is to take a yoga block or a box, a computer, an iPad, anything at all, a bottle, and place it in between your hands. You're basically now forced to clear this hurdle on the way down and on the way back up. If you're not able to take your face closer towards your hands, you're not able to arch your back. As long as your face stays in front and goes around this cube, this obstacle, this hurdle that you've created, you can be sure your back doesn't arch. You might not be strong enough to make it up, and this will be a great test for you to see if you're actually strong enough. But this solution brings great results. Another really common mistake that I see is falling out towards the armpits. This of course only happens with the freestanding handstand push-up or possibly with the back to the wall handstand push-up. Falling out towards the chest side, again, first of all, it's going to be a strength issue, but really there's two more reasons why you might be falling out. The first one is that you're straight up bad at handstands. If you're not good at holding a handstand with locked out arms, you cannot expect to push up and to stay up. Secondly, if you did your pike push-ups, your L push-ups, whatever push-up progression, where every time when you locked your elbows, you looked towards your feet and pushed your armpits towards your feet, over the past, say, year of training, you've built this habit of pushing your shoulders out this way. So now, of course, that you're doing a freestanding handstand push-up, you're also pushing your shoulders out this way. It's going to put you in trouble. From the start, focus on correct form and focus on doing things right. Massive problems also is forgetting about your legs. Your legs make up about 50% of your body. If they're not engaged and tight and under control, they're going to throw you out of your handstand. Your legs shouldn't be an inconvenience or a hurdle. They should almost be there to help you. If you get good at handstands, you'll understand how to use the weight of your legs to actually make it up easier on the handstand push-up. Last but not least, probably the biggest problem or mistake that I see when people training for the handstand push-up is overreaching. I understand you want to make it to this final destination. You want to make it to your freestanding handstand push-up. But if you're not ready yet, that's not going to be efficient training. You need to train a progression where you can actually get in the reps and you can get in clean reps to get stronger. The main focus of handstand push-up training should always be in strength building and in form and technique building, but not in reaching the finish line. You should be training like somebody who doesn't know where this might take him, who doesn't even know that the freestanding handstand push-up exists. That would be the ideal attitude for handstand push-up training and possibly for all bodyweight training in general. Now, the handstand push-up, once you get good at it, you're going to do it without the wall. It turns into the freestanding handstand push-up, and now balance does become a huge aspect of this drill. People struggle with the balance in the handstand push-up, and rightfully so. It's not that easy. Not only do you have to actually stand upside down on your hands and be in control, but also you have to transition from a bent arm position to a straight arm position. And even for somebody who's quite good at handstands, this can be challenging. This can be problematic. Solutions here are going to be to get really, really good at handstands, but especially to get really good at straight arm handstands. Things that you can practice if you're struggling with the balance in your handstand push-up is going to be the slide away on the wall, where you go chest to the wall, quite close to the wall, feet are together, legs are engaged, everything is nice and tight, everything in one straight line. Then you're going to lean your shoulders towards the front. You're basically planching a bit, feet slide down the wall. Once your weight is far enough in front in the fingertips, your feet naturally come off the wall, you stack everything up, you push out tall, you come back to the wall. That's a great way of training a freestanding handstand, but also this particular transitioner that you have to do in the handstand push-up. Remember I explained earlier, the movement path of the handstand push-up. It's not just bend the arms, straighten the arms. It's a shoulder lean, and then a vertical downwards movement, a vertical upwards movement, and an unlean of the shoulders. This slide away movement basically trains the shoulder lean. Then of course, as you get better, you're going to practice just the shoulder lean. If you can do 5 or 10 of them in a row while staying fully in control, you know balance is not going to be a problem in your handstand push-up anymore. Generally speaking, whenever we're on our hands, let it be the handstand push-up before or after, doesn't matter, your weight has to be in your fingertips. As soon as your fingertips are not heavy anymore, as soon as your fingertips are not pushing into the floor, you're going to fall out. Of course, training on parallels is going to make the whole situation a little bit easier. When you're on parallels, your control becomes much more three-dimensional. When your hands are flat on the floor, your fingers are pointing towards the front. As soon as your weight drops towards the back, towards the chest side, you fall. If you're holding on to the parallels, you really have control. If your weight falls towards the chest, you can push with your wrists to get yourself back up. So on parallels, balance becomes significantly easier if you're used to training on parallels. Really important to mention while we speak about balance in the handstand push-up is that I love handstand push-ups, well, because they look cool, but because they're an incredible way of building strength, upper body pushing strength without using external weight. As soon as you train the freestanding handstand push-up, I would not say that it's a great way of training upper body strength anymore. As soon as balance gets put into the equation, too much happens for you to actually be able to properly max out your muscles. I've been able to stand on my hands for an extremely long time. I promise to you, you do not know anybody who's better on their hands than me. It's a simple fact. I've spent more time than most other people in the world on my hands. Multiple times in my life, I've done handstand endurances of over an hour. I am extremely comfortable on my hands. I will still not choose a freestanding handstand as an efficient way of training my shoulder strength. Because here's the thing. As soon as your shoulders get tired, as soon as you get to the point where you're really going to start building strength, you're not able to invest into balance as much anymore and you're going to fall out. But you're falling out not because your muscles fail, but simply because you mess up your position. So unless doing a lot of freestanding handstand push-ups in a row, which is a really cool goal by the way, I would not recommend to train freestanding handstand push-ups as a way of improving your upper body strength. I would stick to chest to wall or even back to wall handstand push-ups or easier progressions, of course. Talking about progressions are the key to learning to handstand push-up, to build upper body strength using your handstand push-up, and in general to simply get better at all of this. The core principle of building strength is progressive overload, meaning to do a little bit more, to challenge your body a little bit more every week, every month, every whatsoever time. Traditionally, this is done by adding a little bit more weight onto the barbell. Think you're at the gym, military press, shoulder press, you put a little weight, you put a little bit more weight, next month you put even more weight, eventually you put 2-3 plates, body weight, whatever. You're progressively overloading by putting a little bit more weight every day. Of course, with bodyweight strength, it's not as simple because you're not going to just eat a little bit more and get a little bit heavier every day and with that overload your shoulders indefinitely. That's not how this would be done. Instead, we use progressions. The idea is to change the body position to bring more weight from your feet into your hands and with that into your shoulders and into your arms. I want to now go over the main progressions that I use for my clients to go from literally 0 to a freestanding handstand push-up and beyond. The first thing that you're going to do is the elastic handstand push-up. You're on your knees, elastic in your hands. Possibly you could also use small weights. You're just going to get used to the movement and build basic strength there. From the start, you want to make sure that you're following the good technique. Don't flare your elbows too much. Look at your hands, elevate your scapula on top, engage your core, all of these things. Now, the first really big milestone for many is going to be the pike push-up. Picture yourself in a downward dog. You raise up on your tippy toes, shoulders come towards the front so they're on top of the center of your hands. You're looking at your hands, elevated scapula. Now you're bringing your face down to the floor by bending the elbows and you're coming back up. Your elbows are going to stay approximately on top of the hands and your forearms are going to be in a 90-degree angle to the floor. That really marks the very first big milestone. If you've pushed to get to your first pike push-up, now nothing stands in between you and the freestanding handstand push-up. Getting your first pike push-up is going to basically require its own episode because there are so many strategies that we can use and we're going to touch base on a couple of them a little bit later. But there are so many strategies that I love using with my clients that I want to keep this for a different episode because I want to be able to spend a lot of time on this. From the pike push-up, it gets pretty simple. We start elevating the feet. You're going to put, for example, a yoga block, 2 yoga blocks, a couch. You put your feet on the bed frame, no matter what. The higher that you're going to elevate your feet, the harder it gets because more weight transfers from your feet into the hands. Now remember, we want to follow these core principles always. Your face needs to come down quite a bit far in front of the hands, not in between the hands. You want to take the same path on the way down as you take on the way back up. Protraction at the bottom. Do not arch your back. Finish with your shoulders on top of the hands. Don't push towards your feet. All of these things, of course, matter a lot now. From day one, it is important to invest into healthy form habits. If you build the habit of doing it right, later when things get more difficult, you're going to also do it right. The final progression of elevating the feet, or where it kind of stops making sense, is going to be the L handstand push-up. Basically where your feet are parallel to the floor as you're at the bottom position of the handstand push-up. This means your feet are probably now on a kitchen counter or on a pretty high table. Elevating the feet higher from here doesn't necessarily become convenient because your feet are now higher than the hips, you slide off, it gets very strange. So instead what we do is we turn around and we train back to the wall. Really important when you train back to the wall is that you don't put both feet on the wall. You're going to just put one foot on the wall. This leg's going to be 90-degree bend so you can push the other leg away from the wall. So as your handstand push up down, you can stay around it. You don't have to arch like crazy. If you put both feet on the wall, you're practicing banana handstand push-ups. And remember, that's the one thing that we're really trying to avoid. We're trying not to arch our back. Just do it right. Push one leg away from the wall and follow the proper form. Once you get good there, you're going to turn around, chest to wall handstand push-ups. As mentioned earlier, point your feet, slide them on the wall. Try not to walk your feet on the wall because that takes a lot of pressure away from the handstand push-up. As you're pushing up, you're not just fighting gravity and your own body weight. You're fighting the friction of your feet against the wall, adding quite a bit of extra challenge and extra strength to your handstand push-up. The exact distance of your hands to the wall, you're going to have to figure out by yourself. It's going to depend a lot on body propositions, but also on the precise form that you got used in your handstand push-up. I like to come a little bit further away from the wall because it's going to allow me to lean even more, which is going to give me a good opportunity to train my chest more. It almost becomes like an incline chest press, which is pretty awesome. I mean, Monday we do bench. In our case, Monday we do chest to wall handstand push-ups and we get them chest gains. Of course, the last progression on this list is going to be the freestanding handstand push-up. But as mentioned earlier, if you're training handstand push-ups for strength, the freestanding handstand push-up is a cool goal. It's a cool bonus, but it's honestly not that essential because it's not going to be the best move to add more strength gains to your workout. A big question though is, when should you move on from one progression to the next? Here's where things get tricky. Here it really depends a bit on the experience and of the feeling of your coach. A coach looking at you should know when you are ready to move on to the next progression. And that's a very important step. A couple rules that you can follow yourself is number one, don't move on to the next progression if at this next progression you cannot do 3 reps yet. I know this sounds crazy to only go up one level if you can at least do 3 or possibly even 4 reps. But here's the thing, if you're only able to do 1 or 2 reps, that means you're so close to the 1 rep max that you're overloading your joints, your shoulders, your elbows, your back like crazy, and your risk of injury becomes very high. Instead, find a way of taking a smaller baby step and stay at your earlier progression a little bit longer, build some strength reserves, so when you move up to the next progression, you can already do multiple reps, keeping your risk of injury significantly lower. A great indicator that you're ready to move on is that you can do your current progression without arching your back, following the correct path and going down and back up exactly in the same angle, that it's consistent. I like to follow the 2x2 rule, meaning if for 2 weeks in the last set of this exercise, you were able to do 2 extra reps than what's required, that's probably a really great sign that you're able to move up and that you're able to move on to a harder progression. Whilst you're now training for your handstand push-up, if you move through all the progressions and if you add a couple of extra baby steps into the routine, you're going to get a whole lot of free gains. And that's one thing that I love about taking clients through my handstand push-up program is that they might come to me and say, hey, I want to learn freestanding handstand and handstand push-up. But then 3 months later, they're like, wow, we learned so much more. Because if you do it right, you're of course going to learn a bend down press. You're going to learn the crowd to handstand and the handstand to crowd press. You're going to learn the lower to headstand. You might learn a dynamic push-up from headstand. Honestly, the list is long, and kind of our only limiting point is our lack of creativity. Doing many progressions is fun. Doing many progressions is going to make sure you don't hit plateaus, and doing many progressions will just get you so many free gains and so much extra stuff along the way. Whilst training for the handstand push-up, besides doing regular progressions, of course you can do additional work. With additional work, I mean isolation exercises, other things than just your pike push-up, your L handstand push-up, these kind of things. One thing that I recommend anybody should include is going to be overhead shoulder presses, military press, barbell press, these kind of things, to just literally build raw strength. Isolate your shoulder pushing strength, get stronger in this way, and then later your handstand push-ups are going to be easier. Just always keep in mind, strength gains are very specific. Yes, the military press and your handstand push-up are kind of the same thing. Building the shoulder press strength will significantly help for your handstand push-up, but it's not a substitute. You still have to invest most of your time into the actual exercise, into the actual handstand push-up. Training regular dips and regular push-ups are a great progression. Weighted dips, weighted push-ups, dips and push-ups against the elastic, these kind of things are going to help you just develop general upper body pushing strength that's going to translate directly into your handstand push-up. Of course, isolating the triceps with triceps extensions, cable pushdowns, skull crusher push-ups, all of these kind of things will also help, since obviously the triceps is going to do a lot of work. Theoretically, you can also consider isolating your anterior deltoid, but if you're training anything else besides the handstand push-up that's upper body pushing heavy, your anterior deltoid is already doing a lot of work. Say, for example, if you're including crows, cranes, planches, rings, really anything that uses your shoulders besides the actual handstand push-up, your anterior deltoid already gets a lot of heat. Most of the time, you don't need to invest more time there. Where you do have to invest a lot of time is, of course, your handstand training. The better you get at handstands, the more comfortable you get on your hands, and the more your body and mind accepts being upside down, being in a handstand as a new normal, the easier it's going to be to do your handstand push-up. Many people come to me because they're stuck with the handstand push-up. They tell me, yo, I've been in a plateau for like 2-3 months, nothing is moving. What can we do to burst through the plateau and to get those gains back, to basically make it fun again? Because if you're on a plateau, it's not fun. If it's not fun, you're not advancing. If you're not advancing, it's not fun. It's this endless circle of doom that we want to break out of to get back to having fun at the gym and to get back to getting stronger and to advancing in our progressions. Now, one thing that's really important to keep in mind when it comes to handstand push-up plateaus is that the handstand push-up is very technical. And sometimes just because your numbers are not going up doesn't mean you're on a plateau. Because maybe your mind-muscle connection, your form, your technique is actually improving slowly. And as long as your technique is improving, you're not on a plateau because you are getting better. The only reason that you would ever hit a plateau is because you lack creativity, because you're lacking progression. The goal is to find as many little tiny baby steps so we never get stuck. These additional progressions are either going to make your current progression harder or the next progression easier, to bring them closer towards each other, to bridge the gap and to make it from A to B. Taking the very easy example of the exercises that we've gone through already. Let's say we would only know the pike push-up and the freestanding handstand push-up. It's unthinkable that this could possibly turn into that. But because we've added the elevated pike push-up, the L handstand push-up, back to wall and chest to wall handstand push-up, all of a sudden, making it from start to finish becomes very believable and becomes very imaginable. But some of these are still too far away from each other. So here's why we need to get creative. A great way of making the next progression easier is by working partial reps. There's 2 versions how you can do this. Say, for example, you're not able to do a pike push-up yet. You're going to take a yoga block and place it between your hands, or possibly even 2 yoga blocks. You're going to do your pike push-up until your head touches the yoga block and you come back up. You're only doing 50% of the range of motion, which means that it's practically, in a way, not really, but basically 50% easier. This week we do it with 2 yoga blocks, then you cut one of the yoga blocks in half, you do it with 1.5 yoga blocks, the week after with 1 yoga block, bam, 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 eventually you have your full range of motion, you got stronger, you bridge that gap. Another great way of doing partial reps is, for example, when you're in the L handstand push-up. Imagine you have your legs on this table, hand on the floor. You lower down, doing full range of motion, but then you put your knees on the floor and you push back up. By putting your knees on the table, weight transfers from your hands into the knees, and pushing back up becomes significantly easier. That's another way of doing partial reps. Then, of course, you can also make reps more difficult. Say, for example, you're at the L handstand push-up, but you cannot do the back to wall handstand push-up. The solution here would be to elevate your hands so you can go with your head further than what you would usually do. You can go extra deep, working additional range of motion, building extra strength. So when you then move up to the back to wall handstand, you can, for example, do partial reps. And with this, you can fuse the 2 of them together and build an easy and gentle bridge. Another way of making exercises more difficult is a dead stop, meaning you're going to lower down all the way to the headstand, release the pressure out of your hands for just a moment, and then push back up. That's a very powerful way. It's basically like doing a box squat where you sit down. You're taking the opportunity away from your body to use muscle elasticity. Usually when we lower down, the muscle goes under tension, and then as we engage, the tension releases and pushes us back up. It's not exactly it, but you can imagine it this way. By relaxing the arms for a moment, you take this opportunity away from the body, and your body has to push from a dead stop, and that's significantly harder. One way of training that I've been using a lot lately is slowing down the eccentric, the lowering down phase of the exercise. There's 2 ways how you could use this technique. Number 1, you can go slow in the eccentric phase, then put your knees down and push back up with an easier progression. In your eccentric phase, you're stronger, you have more power. So by going really slow here, we make it more difficult. Then we put the knees down and we push back up. Pushing up is much harder than going down, so we make the progression a little bit easier. Another great way of making your current progression harder is by slowing down the eccentric of the handstand push-up, meaning as you lower down with your face towards the floor, you go as slow as possible, you take 5 seconds on the way back down, and in a regular speed, you come back up. You're stronger on the way down. So by making the way down slower, you're making the way down harder, and now the way down and the way up are almost the same level of difficulty, and you're going to be able to advance again. Now the idea is really going to be to combine all of these different mechanisms of making progressions easier or harder, figuring out when which one is applied best, and with this, making your entire journey towards the freestanding handstand push-up as smooth and as plateau-free as possible. Lastly, if everything fails and you simply don't know what to do anymore, put on some weight. Not by eating more. I mean, you can also do that, it's always fun. But by using a weighted vest, a heavy backpack, boots around your chest, who cares? Make yourself a little bit heavier. By making yourself heavier, you're making an exercise harder. Traditionally, in gymnastics, when you run out of an idea of how to bridge a plateau, you just put on some ankle weights, train there for a week or 2. At the end of the day, it usually always works. A great way outside the regular handstand push-up progressions, how you can burst through plateaus and get stronger, is by using the sitting plate push exercise. Picture yourself sitting on a bench. You're going to take weightlifting weights, not too big, but big enough, say half the size of a 45-pounder, so a 25-pound weight. You're going to place this flat on your hand in front of your face. And you're going to do overhead pressing with this weight. Now, because the circle of the weight is quite big, you have to make sure that it clears your nose every time. This clearing of the nose, the path that your hands are on now, is going to be quite similar to the actual path of the handstand push-up. Until a certain level, that's a really cool exercise. Once you get to the level of strength where you're going to be doing chest-to-wall handstand push-up or possibly back-to-wall handstand push-ups, I don't think this is a very good option anymore, as you would have to stack up the weight in front of your face. Weights are usually a little bit slippery. If you have wrists like me, they're a little bit more stiff. It's very easy that the weights fall off, and it just becomes a little bit tricky and inconvenient. Personally, my favorite way of training for the handstand push-up is drop sets. Start, for example, with the dead L handstand push-up. Put your head on the floor, push back up until you can't go anymore. You straight away continue, but without putting the head on the floor, possibly even with just doing partial reps. Once that also doesn't go anymore because you're completely burned out, you put your feet on the floor and you do a couple pike push-ups on the floor. Again, as many as you can. Another good idea could be to do extra deep reps combined with partial reps where you put your knees down, for example. You can get very creative here. The idea is just to take a difficult progression, take an easier and an even easier one, and basically go as many reps as you can in each until it's not clean anymore. Personally, the way I train, I do extra deep chest-to-wall handstand push-up straight away into military press with the weights. I absolutely love training this way. I get great gains, I get great burn, get a great pump. Saturday morning, 7 a.m. at Gold's in Venice. That's where you find me. That's my exercise. I'm in love with it. Now, we've already covered a lot. We've covered progressions, we've covered form, we've covered plateau breakers, balance. One of the main things that's missing now, though, is your training split, your weekly volume, these kind of things. The idea of the handstand push-up is to get stronger. Getting stronger is an adaptation of your muscle triggered by a certain stimulus. Now, the awesome thing is that your body, your mind, your muscles, they don't really understand where the stimulus comes from. And to be fair, they don't really care where the stimulus comes from. This means your body doesn't know if you're doing handstand push-ups or if you're lifting weights. It's all the same for your body. And this means that we can use traditional strength protocols from well-researched weight training and implement them into our handstand push-up training. Modern research says you should train 10 to 20 sets per muscle group per week. Important to take into account here is that handstand push-ups are technical and you will be doing technical sets. So you don't have to limit yourself with 20 sets of handstands and handstand push-up related things. But you definitely shouldn't do more than 20 hard handstand push-up sets per week. It's going to get too much. Keep in mind that if you're trying to build size, hypertrophy, the rep count doesn't matter so much as long as you're pushing to getting tired. As long as you take your set to having no more than 2 reps less, hypertrophy is going to be triggered. If you want to build strength, and let's be honest, since we're trying to move up the ladder of progression, strength is going to be the main thing that we're interested in. You need to keep your rep count quite low. Researchers suggest that you should do an exercise difficult enough so you can do 3 or 4 reps of this set exercise. The problem that I'm having with that is that the risk for injuries due to poor form in calisthenics is significantly higher than in traditional weightlifting. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to talk bad about weightlifting or military presses. I have a coach for weightlifting. It's highly technical and I have a lot of respect for it. But injuries can happen much easier in the handstand push-up as you're going to tend to arch your back or lose scapular protraction because the movement is more of a complex full body movement and not an isolation movement. For this particular reason, I do like to keep my sets at least 4 reps per set and I try not to let it drop below that. Important is also to keep in mind that, yes, higher rep count more counts towards hypertrophy than to strength gains, but hypertrophy really means your muscle is getting bigger. More muscle volume means at the end of the day that your muscles are going to be able to apply more force. So getting bigger muscles will also help you get stronger towards your handstand push-up. So there's nothing wrong with training pike push-ups and L handstand push-ups in a more hypertrophy range. And I have plenty of clients who achieve their freestanding handstand push-ups, keeping the rep count higher and never really doing sets with less than 6 reps per set. When it now comes to designing our training split and to making all of these decisions of which progression, how many reps, how hard you should train, the most important thing to keep in mind is that your muscles work on the use it or lose it principle. This means if you stop training, if you stop progressively overloading your muscle will over time lose strength. So the main and most important thing when we're designing our training plan has to be health. Under no circumstance you should ever get injured, because if you get injured, you cannot train anymore. And if you cannot train anymore, you're not just staying on one step, you're slowly walking backwards. Additionally, you got to make sure your routine is fun and realistic so you can actually stick to it. You need to get to know your body, you need to get to know your mind, you need to understand what your body likes when it comes to training, and then create a routine that suits exactly this. The best approach is going to be to change your training cycle every 2 to 3 months, to change up the way that you're training, change up your rep tempo, change up how many reps per set you're doing. The idea is to constantly shock your body with new stimulus. That's going to be a great way to continuously build new muscle, build more strength. One of these training cycles could, for example, be really a strength-based cycle where you're going to start with your main exercises for 3 sets where you do higher rep counts, but then over the next 4 to 8 weeks, you're slowly going to reduce rep count because you're doing harder progressions, but you're going to start doing more sets. So at the end of the week, your volume, your overall volume, which is reps times sets times intensity, in our case, not weight pushed, but progression intensity, is always going to end up being approximately the same. Important is also to remember that muscle is built while we rest. In training, we create these micro tears within our muscle. We're creating the prerequisites for muscle being built. But muscle is only going to be built if you're eating right and if you're recovering right. Most muscle is built out of protein and hormones while you're asleep. If you don't sleep, if you don't rest, if you don't give your body a chance to recover, your body doesn't get a chance to build muscle. Rule of thumb is that you're going to take a whole day off from upper body pushing work, from anterior deltoid work, before and after your handstand push-up workout. I recommend to train your handstand push-up twice a week. If you have a lot of time, if you're good at recovering, if you have experience with recovering from upper body pushing, you can consider training your handstand push-up 3 times a week. The 2 regular splits that I'm seeing is people are either training their handstand push-ups right after their handstand training. So you're going to do your technical work, and 2 or 3 times per week, you're actually going to train for your handstand push-up right after. Or, for my gym rats out there, you're going to train your handstand push-up on your upper body push day or on your shoulder day first. You get to the gym, you warm up, you do your handstand push-up work, and then you do all of the other work that belongs into that upper body push day. Depending on the training cycle that I'm in, I use either this way or that way. When you're done programming your handstand push-up progressions and your handstand push-up specific work, make sure to always start with your hardest progression first. That's when you have the most energy. That's when your general nervous system is the most ready to go. You do your hardest progression, the hardest exercise first, of course, after a really good warm-up. Then you do all the rest, the isolation work, the specific work, the limiting point adjustment work, whatever is needed, you do this after. Last but not least, let's assume that you're in a technical handstand cycle and you're training a handstand push-up at the end of this day. How exactly would this day of training look like? Well, first thing, you're going to do your general warm-up, 6 to 8 minutes, steady, low impact, some kind of a cardiovascular activity. You're going to wake up your mind. You're going to break a light sweat. You're just going to get going. Every training should start like this. Then, of course, without a doubt, without a discussion, and if you have no time for training, that's the only thing you're going to do in this day, you're going to do your shoulder prehab, rehab, and injury prevention work. That's the most important thing. You're spending a lot of time on your arms. You're spending a lot of time on your wrists and on your shoulders. You have to protect them from injury. You have to take care of them. From here, if you're stiff, I would recommend to go into shoulder openers. Shoulder stretches, lat stretches, tricep stretches. Remember, if you're stiff, they're going to make your handstand push-up more difficult. Opening them up at the beginning of your training and possibly even between sets of the handstand push-up will make your life easier. After your shoulder openers, you're going to go into your technical handstand training. Focus on things that you're able to do. 90% of this technical handstand training should be exercises that you can perform somewhat well, so you actually get a training effect and not just a constant jumping up and falling down effect. If you're not good at handstands without the wall, you shouldn't be training handstands without the wall because there's just no point. Come back to the wall, train there, actually get good at handstands, spend quality time upside down on your hands, progressively overload your handstand training. From here, you go into your handstand push-up work. As mentioned earlier, we're going to do our hardest exercise first. 3 to 4 sets, 6 to 8 reps per set. Once we're done with that, we have a bit of room for exploring, for trying different rep schemes, for trying different progressions. These could be lowering down static holds where you change your legs, extra deep handstand push-ups, partial handstand push-ups. The way that I like to program this part after the most difficult exercise is to do something that's not like the most difficult exercise. If the most difficult exercise at the moment is the partial back to wall handstand push-up, I'm probably going to program an extra deep pike push-up, for example, to make sure I hit that range that I wasn't able to hit before. If your hardest exercise right now is, for example, an extra deep pike push-up or L handstand push-up progression, then you might do a partial dead handstand push-up progression in this additional workout part, just to make sure to keep a variety high and to really hit the muscles from all the different directions. Once you're done with that part, we're going to go into isolation work, chest, triceps, possibly anterior deltoid, these kind of things. At this point, you're going to be tired. It's been quite a long workout. You're going to be burned out. Last thing left now is just going to do a couple post-workout stretches for your shoulders, but also for your core and for your hip flexors, for your glutes, because they were engaging a lot during these exercises. Stretching them after your workout is going to make you feel better and possibly even make you less sore. Now, as you can probably tell, I'm quite in love with handstand push-ups. I think they're great. They're difficult, they're complex, but they're highly, highly adjustable towards anybody's level. I strongly recommend to you, head down in the description below, click on the link, grab yourself the free handstand push-up workout customized towards your level from my website. It's going to give you a really great idea and starting point of what can be good progressions for your current level, and especially what could be rep counts that you need to try to hit. How strong and how far do you have to go before you move on? If you're really inspired and you want to take your whole handstand push-up game to the next level, then check out the Handstand Push Up program on my website. We're going to go through technical cycles where we work through progressions, followed by strength cycles where we focus more on building raw strength. We're going to combine things with handstand technique work to make sure you also get better at controlling your handstands. Plus, we're also going to sprinkle in additional work, isolation work, but of course, we're also going to work the other parts of the body to make sure you stay well balanced. It's a great program. Lots of thought has gone into it. I highly recommend it. Thank you so much for spending this time for me. Thank you for listening. If you have questions about the handstand push-up that weren't answered here, please do me a favor. Head down to the comments. Let me know all of your questions so I can either get back to you right away or make a fully separate episode just for that, just for you. No matter what, work hard, use as many progressions as you can, stay strong, and get your handstand push-up. I'm going to see you next time.